Hey everyone, welcome back to FKW. Today we're going to work on some nice sheaths. First thing you want to do is get yourself a piece of leather. I usually buy it by a half a cow at a time. And these are just some pieces I have left over that I'm working with to make a knife sheath for the knives we made earlier. I make templates of the different knives that I'm doing, so that way all I have to do is take this, trace it onto that particular piece of leather, and then cut accordingly. I like to use rotary cutters. That's garbage. And just follow your trace line of what you did, and then you'll have a basic outline. I'm not too worried about rough edges at this point because there's a lot more to go here. What I'm going to do with this one, as you can see in this one here, I've already folded this over and I used contact cement in order to adhere this. I also use a piece that I've cut out that's 1.5 inches wide. That's a typical belt. I always leave a gap for a larger belt, but a typical gun belt and knife belt is about 1.5 inches. So I make sure that it goes through very easily. What I'm going to do at this point is set this up to a right-handed. So I want to fold this over. Open this up, see where my belt line would be. Got a nice gap right there. Take a pencil. I'm just going to score a line real quick. All right? And after scoring that line on the inside, I'm just going to make a mark. So now I have a mark here, and I have a score line here. What I will then do is with the contact cement, that one's still got a seal on it. Let's go back to the one that doesn't. I'll just put it on here because all I want is a little bit of contact. That's it. Just to hold it till the sewing starts. And then just marry it right back to my trace line. Once that part's done, you got your edges lined up on the outside. Clamp, clamp, and clamp. Now, whatever little bit of contact cement you have remaining, just get rid of that. And we'll put that up to the side. That needs to dry for approximately 10 to 15 minutes is what I like to wait. At that point, I've already got a dry one here. Now you'll notice on this one, I've already drilled the holes. So what I do is once this is set in, I take the pencil again and I draw a square. Now where this laps over to here, you'll notice I leave a good 1/4 inch gap. I want my threads coming down in here, not out here, because I still have to stitch this whole piece down with gussets. Also, I have to open this up, which you'll see later, and that's where I hide the finished knot on the rest of the work. We'll be back in a second. I'll bring you over to this desk over here where we get the drilling done. Okay, on to some of the drilling portion. What I'm using right now is a 3/32 bit. This all depends on, number one, the thread size you're going to be using. I'm going to be doing this all in hand sewing, so I'm using a larger thread with a number 22 hand sewing leather needle. following that X that I made earlier on the back of this sheath, before you can do anything else, you have got to get this going. You just sit there and hand drill the holes that you want. You're going to go all the way around the perimeter. Remember, 1/4 inch off. All the way around the perimeter, and I like to put an X through the middle. Then we're going to get over to sewing. As you can see, this is primarily done. So let's get some sewing done. Back, we're going to concentrate on the sewing now. What you want, like I said earlier, was a 22 needle, or at least a number 20. What I do is I thread through one side and one side only, and I leave excess. Then I'm using my fingers, I pinch that excess off. Now I'm going to start on the inside because I don't want my knot to be on the outside when this is finished. I don't want it over here, I want it inside, not where the blade edge is, but in an inside corner. So I'm going to pull the needle through, and then I'm just going to follow in a pattern. As you see, I just set up my own little spool work, and I'm just going to keep going like so. Now, you can see where it's stitched here, here. Now it'll be stitched here. These will be filled back in because once you go all the way around and through your X's, now you got to back your way out, and that's what's going to fill in these other gaps. To give you an example, going on this side, to show you, I'm going to just stop here at this point for the purposes of this video. And I'm going to start working my way back. I just went up from here to here. Now I'm going to come back to here. Now you can start to see what's going to happen here. All right, you'll see. Now, went up, it was half spaced, coming back, filled in the rest of the gaps. So now you have a solid stitch line. And then you're going to follow up, back, over, back, up, back. However you want to do it. That's why I use a 3/32, because it gives me enough room that if I had to go back through another hole, I could. And then when I get to this point here, I'm going to tie off. Actually, in this corner. Yes, in this corner. I'm going to tie off with a triple knot. We'll get to that in a little bit. Okay, I've already box stitched all the way through. As you can see, through the X, all the way around in the square. That's done. Now I've got 2 loose ends. The reason I want these loose ends to be down here is if you had them here, they'd be visible. And if you had them here, they'd be at the blade side of the knife, which could cut them. At this point, since I have the 2 loose ends, I'm just going to triple knot this. Now this is wax coated thread, so it binds pretty good. Now that I have just this little bit left, I'm just gonna, and within a 1/4 inch, and that's done. Now it's time for gussets. Gussets protect the blade from cutting through your final stitching on the outside. So what I'll do is apply a little bit of cement. I'll take my gusset strips I've cut from leather earlier, and I'll just line them up for the time being. Alright. I will take a piece of paper towel and just bring it down so. Now, clamps again. And again, we're back into about a 10-minute wait. And just let that sit, and then we'll continue down to the bottom. We'll be back in a minute. Okay, what you see I've done here is I offset a corner to marry into this piece here that's coming down straight. This is going to go at an angle. Again, there's overhang. I'm not worried about overhang right now. I take my rotary, and that's gone. Even with that little bit of overhang that's still left, it's not going to be an issue. Again, I'm back to clamps. And let's just give it a little bit of time to set before we start drilling, or actually gluing this over and then start the drilling process. We'll be back in a short minute. Okay, the gussets now have been joined in here. What we're going to simply do is fold this over for the profile of the knife. Again, do not worry about rough edges. Not worried about that in the least at this point. It's going to look out good. Alright, let's take our cement again. And again on both sides on this one. We're going to carry them over. Get them as even as possible. When you get to your first spot here, once you have that married correctly, you like the way the top looks coming in, then gently work your way down. Again, don't worry about your edges at this point. You want them as close as possible, but they don't have to be perfect. Now, again, I'm going to let that cement set up for about 10 minutes. And then when we come back, we'll start drilling the holes and marking off with this tool here where we want our holes to be done. We'll be back shortly. Alright, welcome back. Here we go again. Now, we're removing the clamps. As you saw previously, the gusset was laid in, which is another piece of leather in between to keep the knife blade from cutting through the thread work that's going to be done. Now, this becomes critical. Very gently, as you can see here, here's your gusset. This is your outer piece of leather, and that's your inner piece of leather. Take your marker and gently go down, but make sure you stay on the gusset. Then you'll see the holes that I have here now. We're not going to be threading, since we're hand threading, we're not going to thread every single hole. We're going to go every other one because I'm using a very coarse thread in order to get this done. Alright, we're going to go over to the drill. We're going to drill our holes, and prior to doing that, as a matter of fact, what you should do, on the back flap, see how I told you to stay off at least 1/4 of an inch? Peel this back to where you threaded in here. And there's a reason for that. You're going to see that in a little bit. That's where we hide our stitching from the outside. Alright, let's get over.